and you embrace it differently. And so I felt like God was speaking to me about love. I've been seeing just trials and tribulations, I know, in my life over the past couple of weeks, and just people around me, and it just seems like turmoil has moved forward, and people of the word have forgotten that God says that nothing will separate us from his love. So I was inspired by God to really study this word and really understand what it means for my life, for my family's life, because we've been going through a rough time this past couple of weeks, and for everybody around me. What does this mean, Lord? Sometimes we forget that his love is infinite in the midst of our stuff. And so he inspired me, and I know he inspired me because he needed to get me back in my place of understanding that despite what comes up against us, we have a reason to smile, and we have a reason to dig deep inside for that joy that he's placed on the inside of us. And so I know that Paul's letters are full of wisdom, full of theology, full of God's love, and it helps us to understand who we are to God, if nothing else. So his letters to the Romans was written as he prepared to travel to Jerusalem with financial offerings that he had collected from the Gentile churches of Macedonia and Achaia, Greece. The collection was established to help the poor communities of Jerusalem to thrive. So after leaving these two cities, Paul traveled to the city of Corinth, which is the noted place of his writing to the Roman church. Now, ironically, as Paul writes this letter, the context and the content was based solely on a mandate from God, because he at this point had never encountered the Roman church, so he had no authentic idea of the culture that existed within the church. His plan was to visit Rome after leaving Jerusalem and before heading to Spain to preach the gospel. So the question became, why would God have Paul write this letter to the Roman church when his visit was so near? So now let's keep in mind that the church of Rome was started by both the Gentiles and the Jews. They started this church during their travels back from Pentecost. And in knowing both cultures, their lifestyles and mindsets were vastly different from each other. It's almost like bringing monks and Pentecostals together to start a church. It was two different mindsets, two different ways of looking at God, two different ways of praising him, but God brought them together. And the one thing he said is, because you guys come from two different entities, that's not my issue. That's not my concern. I'm saying I'm bringing you together to build a church. So you are now as one.